groups, or maybe we're all going to go on the long walk. But anyway, there's a long walk that our biologist, Zach Felix, is going to lead. If anybody doesn't feel up to a long walk, they can hang here. There are actually a couple of petroglyphs right here that we can maybe look at before we do the long walk.
About 7 sites.
And then we will reconvene, and then there are some other more farther out petroglyphs for people who probably will have to use the ATV. Zach, are we going to be able to use the ATVs to get to the farther ones? Yeah. So some of us may want to jump on the ATVs and zip around and look at some of the farther flung petroglyphs. There's an amazing cave. This is funny. I'll tell them about the cave. Last time we were here, then Jeff was here too. These two poor guys. There's this huge cave on the property, way on the other side of the property. Like, I'm talking a couple miles from here. And we all wanted to see the cave because it's about as big as this circle that we're standing in, and probably has been used by different Native Americans for many, many centuries. But what these guys didn't know was that we drove over there in ATVs, but we had to traipse down, we had to bushwhack down this huge ravine, this thorny, rocky ravine down to this creek bed, and then kind of crawl out the other side, and then make our way up this incredibly steep hill to this awesome cave. And these two gentlemen persisted, and Zach was there too, and we had a blast, but all three of us have decided we're not doing that again today. So without further ado, I'll let Tommy tell you about petroglyphs.
All right, where we are is a unique place in not just Georgia, probably the Southeast. There are more little petroglyph sites here than any other place that I know of. And I've recorded about over 300 sites here in Georgia. Most of them are from, if you drew a line across Georgia, Interstate 20, they're north of Interstate 20, and a few sites in Alabama and Tennessee. We have more petroglyphs and stone pile sites in Georgia than all the rest of the states around us combined. And the Etowah River Basin is where most of these are found. So this was like a hotbed of the kind of a center of their belief system. Now, what you're going to hear from me today is what has been assembled in the last 20 years or so about the Native American mind. Previously, archaeology has not been. They didn't want to get involved in the mind because that was kind of a religious, kind of putting belief systems on people that may not be their belief system, and so on and so forth. But their stories were recorded by James Mooney back in the 1880s and 90s. He lived with the Indians for, I think, 15, 20 years. And he recorded their mythology, their stories, and their sacred formulas that, if you had a headache, you went and you did this to help your headache. Or if your baby was sick, you did this. So those were considered to be children's stories up until the 60s, 70s, and then people began to look at these, which I was at that time very far outside the Native American, the archaeological community. But some of us got together and formed the Eastern States Rock Art Research Association. And we began to compare notes. Now, this was just before the internet was the place to go. You used to have to look up somebody's phone number. You had to go visit them. They had to send you 35 millimeter, not very good pictures of sites and that sort of thing. And I walked all over North Georgia through these woods, following farmers and all sorts of informants that brought me to these sites. So we've taken another look at these stories. Well, these stories, this is what they believe. James Mooney had recorded 600 myths from the Cherokee They were written on deer skins, on bark, on boards. Even sometimes he went to their cabins and they wrote it out on the ground of how this myth occurred and so forth. He gleaned from that the top about 150, and the rest of that stuff was stored away, and it's up in the Smithsonian right now. It'd be a good research project for somebody. But he got the gist of what they were talking about and put it in his book, in his Smithsonian report for the Bureau of Ethnology back in 1890. There's also another good report called the Cherokee River Cult. It's just a short 20-page report of it. If any of you want a copy of it, you give me your email, I can send it to you. It explains the association between water and stone and their beliefs. So they were always going to water for various things if a child was born. If they were going to play one of the ball games that was mentioned earlier, if someone was sick, they go to water because water was the place you could purify. And once you were purified, you could sort of start anew. You could kind of start over. So water was very important to them.